You are currently the only person in this conference.
On ethics test you have, GS test you have started writing? Partly. Partly means? What is part? PYQ. Which GS are you starting with? Quality. And you will continue writing PYQs till what? January, February. Then prelims will start. How many PYQs are you writing? Hmm. Good, good. So we will do Unit 4 today, Union Government and Administration. Before that, we will discuss the issues regarding PSUs. We have already written down in the previous classes the overall pictures about PSUs and second ARC recommendations. Specifically, we will do this today. So as to how in the answer format it comes in. So in question, it might give you that what are the issues plaguing the PSUs in India. Okay. Comment, or PSUs are no longer relevant in the 21st century, or the models of PSUs are no longer relevant in the 21st century. Comment, things like that. So these things will be asked, or things will be. So, what are the key issues and challenges with PSUs? Okay, we have already discussed, but I've written it down. First is inefficiency and poor financial management. Okay? Now, another part of this point is something called soft budget constraints. In the sense, uh, if your parents tell you that okay, take 20,000 rupees per month, don't ask more than that. Okay? You take on the 20th or 25th of the month, you spend all the money, then you ask for money and they send you money. That means 20,000 is not the strict limit. You ask more, you will get. That is a soft budgetary constraint. That means budgetary constraint is there, but if you ask money, you will get money. Some, if your parents sometimes become strict, no money, only 20,000 you will have to make do with it. Or for example, you start working, you say to your boss that on 25th your salary is, I mean, all the savings, all the money you had is finished. It gives some more money. Boss will not give you, right? Because what is the difference? Somewhere limit is hard and somewhere limit is soft, right? So soft budgetary constraint is a problem in PSUs. The government says, okay, this much amount of money you have for this financial year. PSUs will ask some more money in the month of October or November or December. That okay, we have done a fair good job, but next 2 months we don't have money. Government says, okay, take some money. This is called soft budgetary constraint. It creates a problem because PSUs know if they mess up, so yeah, government will bail them out. Government will give them money, right? So that is why the incentive to cut back cost is very less. If your parents are always giving you money whenever you want it, you don't have an incentive to uh, reduce the partying you do, right? But if you earn very less and you have no other option of income, so that you manage it more efficiently, more responsibly. Okay? That is the problem with PSUs. In a private sector, what if they go to a private investor and ask some more money because they are out of it? Private investor will ask why? Why haven't you saved up money for this? Where did you spend it all, etc. etc. It's the most stringent in private sector. In PSUs, it is not so stringent. Government gives out money. So inefficiency and poor financial performance. So many PSUs suffer from inadequacy, leading to poor financial performance, low profitability, and a heavy burden on the exchequer. Just tell me what the data is, how much Air India was losing per day. That data will improve the answer, of course. ₹20 crore per day. Huh? You see. So in case of Air India, it was 20 crore per day. So per day, exchequer was losing this much amount of money just by keeping Air India with the government. 20 crore per day would mean what? 600 crore per month. Yes. And per year, 7,200 crore. This was the amount of money Air India was losing. Per month, 600 crore it was losing. Just imagine. Per year, if this is the loss, Tata bought it for around 50,000 or 80,000. Uh, 50 was the total. So 18 plus 32, the calculation was 32 or 35, because 32,000 was the total debt Air India was in. Okay? And Tata gave around 18,000 and took away all the debt also. So total cost for Tata was about 50,000. Okay? So total valuation of Air India was about 50,000. The current valuation is around 56,000 that day we checked. Okay? So this shows, I mean, this much amount of losses it was going on, and Exchequer was giving out money. This is what soft budget constraint, because the bureaucrat are sitting and running Air India. Same kind of bureaucrat are running the finance ministry, so they give out money. Okay, it's not working, we'll give out money. So that is why this is the problem of first problem of PSUs: inefficiency and poor financial management. Second, overstaffing. Now, PSUs were seen as employment giving organizations, organizations that provided employment. Overstaffing in PSUs, driven by social and political pressure, it led to high operating cost and reduced competitiveness. Operating cost became very high and competitiveness went down. Okay. The Niti Aayog's committee on public sector enterprises recommended right sizing of workforce and rationalization of staff in loss-making PSUs. See, with every issue, I have given a recommendation wherever it is relevant, and whatever judgment that is relevant. Okay? So we could have done this after we have written down issues and we have done solutions or way forward. But with issue, we will read solutions also. In answer, we are flexible. Either we write the solution there or at the end as way forward. Okay? So this is what Niti Aayog's committee on PSE is recommending: right sizing of workforce and rationalization of staff in loss-making PSUs. That cut down the staff, okay? More lean organization, okay? NPM model. Balco Enterprises versus Balco Employees Union versus New York, India upheld the government decision to disinvest, highlighting the need for PSUs to be financially viable and efficient. So in this, what happened whenever government went for disinvestment and privatization of PSUs, the employees union were against it. Even Supreme Court said that these PSUs have to be run in a very efficient way, or else they are just guzzling down taxpayers' money, right? So this is what is happening. Okay? Political interference. PSUs often face political interference by functioning, particularly in matters related to appointments, pricing, investment decisions, leading to suboptimal outcomes. Okay? Whatever investment decisions they are taking or any kind of appointment they are making, political pressure is there. So if they want to appoint somebody in the board of directors, the ministry is pressurized that appoint our person, things like that. In Maruti Udyog Limited versus Ramlal, the Supreme Court emphasized the importance of maintaining professional management in PSUs, free from undue political influence. Okay, you write these judgments. Previously, what we discussed, Balco Employees Union. Now, Maruti Udyog Limited versus Ramlal. So these are the judgments we need to put in. So for every such kind of topic, whatever I discuss, this is how it looks like in the game. समझ आ रहा है सब कुछ? Outdated technology and lack of innovation. Whatever they have, in this case, Coal India Limited is a perfect example. It is so oversized and so outdated that its technology are in the 1990s, those mining technologies. Okay? So that is why the government is trying to bring in private industries or private enterprises into these mining operations or heavy industry operations. Okay? Second, ARC recommended increased investment in technology and R&D in PSUs so that their competitiveness has increased. So whenever writing a way forward, even this is a very generic way forward, that to increase investment in R&D to improve competitiveness. In bracket, you write second ARC. That looks a different statement altogether with second ARC to finish with, isn't it? Disinvestment and privatization challenges. While disinvestment and privatization are seen as solution to improve efficiency, they often face resistance from employees, trade unions, etc., etc. For example, the disinvestment of BPCL, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, faced delays due to opposition from employees and concerns over valuation. Another example of this is ordnance factory boards. Ordnance factory boards. This is another issue under this. Now, whenever writing in answers, you try to write, especially in paper 2, you try to write what constitutional article will apply somewhere. Just write that article's name. You don't have to explain it. Just write that article's name. Or is there any legislation that applies? Even during writing those generic points, if you feel that there is a constitution constitution article, that might be a DPSP, that might be what do you say, a line in the preamble, anything in the constitution. If you think it applies, write it. Don't fear that whether you can write constitutional articles or not, judgments or not, things like that. Don't fear it, right? Because paper 2 is such a thing that you will have to also linkage paper 1 into it, so that a fresh perspective comes in. But a more better idea is also to include things like judgments and constitutional articles and global best practices also. Okay? Now we have understood that NPM is applying in a lot of matters. What other thinker will apply? If you think about it, Taylor will apply. Efficient management, scientific management, right person for the right job, mental revolution. Under solution, for example, this the problem is what? Problem is employees are dissatisfied. Solution is mental revolution. Right? That employees and businesses think that an efficient organization is good for all, because scientific management does not only improve or scientific management is not only about improving the efficiency, it is also about making prosperity in the society. Yes, we studied that, so that will apply here also. Reinforcement theory. How that? Huh. Yeah. Management by objectives also. That will also apply. So every class, just remind me to discuss this with every topic, so that we'll also keep that in mind. What all thinker? Simon bounded rationality. Simon won't apply. Curious theory, I will not apply. It hasn't come yet. We'll see what else applies. Article 12. So you can use Article 12 to start the introduction. That PSUs are state under Article 12, and their responsibility towards the society is equal to the state, or they are the operating limbs of the state. Yes. Companies Act. Now these PSUs, some are public companies. We wrote that there. So these PSUs have a responsibility towards what do you say? So they have to be responsible to the shareholders. Okay? Right, sure. So Companies Act, uh, Companies Act determines how should be the functioning of the company in related to corporate governance, financial reporting, auditing. Everything is structured according to Companies Act, and these PSUs, these new form of PSUs, are as second ARC recommended, are formed under Companies Act. Public Enterprise Financial and Accountability Act of 1998 provides a framework for accountability and financial management of PSUs, ensuring transparency and efficiency in operation. Wherever in your point you find this relevant, you put it. The other value additions also. Rangarajan Committee on Disinvestment. They advocated for strategic disinvestment in PSUs, emphasizing the need to bring in private sector efficiency and capital while retaining control in strategic sectors. Yes, this is similar to the idea of good governance. That government should stay in important places. Rest you can privatize and give it to other people. NPM would be privatize everything. This is more of a good governance. Yes, Rangarajan Committee. Wherever you find these relevance, you just keep putting in your solutions or your answers. Right? These are given very separately because they are you can be used anywhere. Whatever question comes, this note will be applicable everywhere. Okay? In that way, we have made it. Another judgment: Steel Authority of India Limited versus National Union Waterfront Workers, 2001. Supreme Court ruled that contractual obligation of PSUs on the stressing the need for PSUs to operate within framework of law and contractual commitments. So whatever contract they have with, for example, employees or anything, PSUs are liable to that. PSUs just can't run away from it by saying that okay, we are running on losses and we won't pay your money, etc. You'll have to take care of. So you have to function like a company. If you don't, then the way companies are treated, you will also be treated. Okay, so that's how you should be financially prudent enough. Now, how can we improve this? Second ARC is there, of course, but we have discussed second ARC, whatever points is. But certain best practices also we can apply. What are these best practices? For example, if you remember, okay, see this one, see strategic disinvestment, UK's privatization program. You can, if you don't remember this, you can write Rangarajan Committee. You don't remember Rangarajan Committee, write this. Okay? So you have a lot of options through this. Okay? First is professionalization of management. So recently, you might come across that PSU's management, they're moving towards professionalization. That professionals will come and manage rather than bureaucrats. Singapore's Temasek Holding, a state-owned enterprise, is a model for its professional management, autonomy, and focus on performance and returns. Okay. So Singapore's best practice is called Temasek Holdings. These are state-owned enterprises. These are like PSUs of Singapore, but they have professional management and autonomy. So it's the best of both worlds. So you have government control, for example, government ownership of major areas, the whatever Rangarajan committee said, but there is autonomy and professionalization. So that is best of both worlds. Private sector efficiency, government sector accountability. Yes, Temasek Holding is such an example. Technological investment. So we saw that R&D is very much important, and second ARC also said this. The best practice of this would be something that China does. The state-owned enterprises of China, they so their R&D investment is very high. That's why they are very globally competitive. Their private companies also have government backing. That whatever you want to do, you do. Will back you. Will back you with R&D investment, everything. That is why things such as Huawei, Tencent, these are huge corporations across the world. Okay? Because Chinese government backs them. Whatever the government is recently doing, disinvestment, etc. Other schemes such as that the government has. So when writing answers, you should use all your knowledge from GS2, GS3, that whatever is happening recently in news, whatever economic policies that the government is following, you should keep that in mind. So national monetization pipeline. National monetization pipeline is going on. So you write that under disinvestment, government is presently working regarding this. Performance linked incentive. Government has introduced performance linked incentive in several PSUs to encourage efficiency. Huh. So, whatever the management or the people, if things are getting efficient in this quarter, profits have increased, you will get a percentage of it. So, directly, that person will now focus on profit. Yes. Corporate governance reforms. The government has implemented corporate governance reforms in PSUs, including appointment of independent directors, strengthening audit committees, and enhancing transparency in financial reporting. So, all the best practices have been implemented recently. Solutions, specifically under solutions, professionalization of management, Temasek Holdings, okay, strategic disinvestment, Rangarajan Committee. So you can only write this strategic disinvestment, Rangarajan Committee. That's it. Okay. Or the first point was what? Professionalization of management. Either second ARC, write Temasek Holdings, best practice Singapore. Okay. Simply you can only write this and go away if you don't have time. Technological upgradation, second ARC, or the Chinese model. Autonomy and reducing political interference, you write simply this judgment. Maruti Udyog versus Ramlal. Right sizing of workforce, Niti Aayog recommendation, you write that. So this was one issue under what do you say? PSUs. End of the class, we'll write an answer on PSU and this just to refresh memory. Unit 4. Executive, Parliament, Judiciary structure, functions, work processes, recent trends, intergovernmental relations, uh, Cabinet Secretariat, Prime Minister's Office, Central Secretariat, boards, field organization. Under this, lot of things are written. Issues are very few. Issues are three, essentially three issues under this. Center-state relation, PMO and Cabinet Secretariat. These are three broader issues. Okay? In today's class, we'll understand every topic, every word. Okay? In the last of your syllabus, the 12th unit or the 14th unit, whatever that is, it's written that issues in Indian administration. That is the name of the issue, name of the unit. So there we'll cover such kind of issues that do not fall under one unit but fall under every unit. Okay? Just show me the syllabus. Significant issues in Indian administration. How do I go back? Like this? Okay, okay. Perfect. So we'll understand the structure of this first, and then we'll do what do you say? Like we did PSUs today, we'll do issues like that. Whatever is remaining, we'll do tomorrow. Because in a syllabus, we'll see there will be a lot of words. Issues that are asked are very limited. Union executive. First, let's understand the structure. You all must be knowing under GS2, you must have studied this. Union executive. In these particular things, just remember the articles in which these are written. Firstly, starting with the president. The president happens to be the nominal head of the government. He does not, or head of the state. He is not the head of the government. Head of the government is prime minister. Whatever president does is according to the aid and advice of the prime minister. That means who is running the show? The prime minister is running the show. Now, so president is the de jure head and prime minister is the de facto head. Understood till now? Now, in this scenario under Indian administration, president happens to have a huge role in terms of especially appointments of judges, appointment of civil servants. President appoints, appointment of ministers, cabinet minister. In this process of appointment, president acts as a bridge between the executive, legislature and judiciary, but the control over president is of the executive. because president, whatever it does, council of ministers, they control it. Okay? In this process, president's office uh, or the independence of president's office can be an issue that can be discussed. Okay? President, today we won't discuss the issues about president, we will discuss issues about president and governor together when we do state administration. Okay? Because whatever will be asked of president, it will be asked of governor. Because governor is a burning issue always, and questions are always repeated from governor. Under president, the issues can be that president is just the rubber stamp. Is only the signing authority, it does nothing. From there, it can move on to something like if a president acts according to their own whims and fancies, that will create problem of because the president is not accountable to anyone. That president is also indirectly elected. Directly, people have not chosen. So, this nature of the president makes it much more immune to issues in administration as compared to other offices. That's why three issues are relevant: separation of power, center-state relations, and prime minister and cabinet secretariat. Today, our focus will be more on PMO and cabinet secretariat. Center-state relations and separation of power will understand, but center-state relations will also do under state administration. Okay? Because under state administration, the most essential things are two: governor and center-state relations. Under union executive and union government, there are much more larger issues. Under state, the most important should have been district, but district administration is a separate unit altogether. Within district administration, there is, apart from that, there is rural local governments and urban local governments also. So those are different issues. Now you understand how the topics are shaped here, because topic wise we can't restrict ourselves. Everything will be used everywhere. Let's start with the structure of it. Pillars of union government. First, under the union executive, there is the president, who is the nominal head, indirectly elected by the electoral college and acts on the aid and advice of council of ministers or the prime minister. The advice is binding except to certain discretionary power that the president has, such as if no party has a majority, how will it be chosen? President will choose. Yes. If things such as giving pardoning powers, yeah? That if an individual is not very what do you say? The individual is not very keen on or even the pardoning power of the president, that is not too much discretionary. Yes? That means the reasoning should be rational enough. You can't just say, because I thought so, I gave it. Yes? So that is the role of president mostly. Prime minister becomes the real head. The term used is keystone of the cabinet arc. If this is an arc, and it is made of stone, the stone here is the keystone. You remove this, all the stones will break down. Keystone of the cabinet arc. Appointed by the president is the leader of the party or the coalition in majority in Lok Sabha. So right now there is a coalition government, NDA government. Yes. Council of Ministers appointed by the president on the advice of the PM. It comprises of 3 tiers: cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and deputy ministers. Okay. So these cabinet ministers have an independent policy making role, like finance ministry, home ministry, things like that. There are minister of state also, small portfolios they are given, or ministers of state are also attached to big cabinet ministers. They work as assistants to cabinet ministers. Yes, and there are deputy ministers. Deputy ministers' role are like the ones who are attached to these cabinet ministers. Yes. And ministers of state independent charge have independent charge of different ministries within the government. The Council of Ministers, led by the Prime Minister, exercise all real executive power. It formulates national policies, makes key appointments, prepares the budget, and guides the legislative agenda. Okay. The Cabinet is a more smaller group within the Council of Ministers. Now, if this is Council of Ministers, within this, a small part will be the Cabinet. Yes, but these are most senior ministers. The Council of Ministers meet frequently to take most of the important decisions. Its decisions are binding on all ministers. Okay? Principle of collective responsibility. This is the bedrock of parliamentary system. The Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha because they are elected from Lok Sabha itself. Okay? So Lok Sabha, they come out of Lok Sabha and they are responsible to the Lok Sabha. So this is what makes sure that representative democracy is there. People who are ruling are actually elected out of the elected people or selected out of the elected people in the parliament. Principle of collective responsibility. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. They swim or sink together. A vote of no confidence against the government leads to resignation of the entire council. Individual responsibilities. So collective responsibility is towards the parliament. Individual responsibility of the minister is towards the president. And if the president thinks that person is not working very well, the president can remove that person. Okay, remove that person. So whenever cabinet reshuffle happens, it happens in this way. Okay? Ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president, which in reality means pleasure of the prime minister. A minister can be removed if the PM is dissatisfied with their performance. During COVID or just after COVID, the president removed the health minister and the president removed the health minister, changed the health minister. Next part within the union government is parliament. Next role. There are two bodies, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. It represents the people. Lok Sabha represents the people. They are directly elected for 5 years. The way general elections happen for this. Do elections happen for Rajya Sabha? General elections? Direct elections do not happen. It represents the states of Indian Federation. Members are elected indirectly by elected members of state legislative assembly for a 6-year term. So it's a body that goes on for 6 years or term that is 6 years, but Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. Yes, permanent body. It's a permanent body with 1/3 of its members retiring every 2 years. Okay. Legislative function. Legislative function to make laws on subject in the union and concurrent list. So the union and concurrent list. So there are 3 lists we have seen: union, concurrent, and state. So union can make laws on these. State can make laws on these two. Yes, you have understood this. So this is the jurisdiction of the parliament to make laws. Things such as national security, telecommunication, these things, defense, these things are taken up. Executive control, they control the executive. Various parliamentary devices are there, question hour, zero hour, even parliamentary committees sit and scrutinize whatever the executive is doing. Okay? Question hour, zero hour for asking questions and raising matters of urgent public importance, such as, for example, raising issues such as Manipur issue. The Manipur issue is raised. What is exactly the executive doing? Why things are not stopping it? So, Parliament, these things are asked. Motion is adjournment motion. No confidence motion, censure motion, things like these are to scrutinize and criticize government action. Okay? Parliamentary committees. They act as mini parliaments to examine bills, budgets, things like that. Public accounts committee, estimates committee, that whether the budget estimation has been done in a correct way or not. Are they missing out something or not? This is being done. Financial function. Parliament has the final say over the government's finances. The annual budget must be passed by the parliament. Money bills can only be introduced in Lok Sabha. So that means uh, any tax, for example, no tax can be implemented, or no tax can be even formulated without the approval of the parliament. Yes, without the approval of the legislature. Constituent function, that it can amend the constitution under 368. Okay? It has all the powers to amend the constitution, and within these amendment powers, there are different levels of amendment. Some where you need simple majority, somewhere you need extraordinary majority, things like that. So this is the overall picture of how what parliament is, what PM is, what president is. The mostly descriptive part. Our focus will be on issue. First, let's cover the terms that are used in the syllabus. Then we'll go to the issue. Now, how do these bills become law? If a bill has to become law, so for example, a money bill. Money bill will be introduced only in Lok Sabha after taking the recommendation from the president. Without president's recommendation, no money bill can be passed. Yes. First reading, introduction of the bill. Bill is introduced. Second reading, general discussion followed by clause scrutiny, often by a select or a joint committee. Yes. Third reading, final vote happens on the bill, whether we are passing this bill or not passing this bill. The bill is then sent to the other house, which repeats the process. Yes. In case of money bill, just voting does not happen. General discussion will happen, and if there are certain recommendations that the Rajya Sabha wants to give out, it will give to the Lok Sabha that these are the changes that are required very much. And then after that, president gives assent or does not give assent. So that is the process in which these things work. Next term is union judiciary. There is a Supreme Court at the top, high courts, and subordinate courts. This is the apex body that determines or interprets the constitution. High Court also interprets the constitution. That is why these two are called the constitutional courts of India. Constitutional courts are both High Court and Supreme Court. Don't just confuse that Only High Court is the constitutional court. Sorry, Supreme Court is the constitutional court. High Court is also a constitutional court. Supreme Court, it comprises the Chief Justice of India and other judges appointed by the President. Okay? Judges are appointed through the collegium system, a system where Chief Justice of India and a group of senior Supreme Court judges recommend appointments to the Supreme Court. Yes. This collegium system, let's understand this collegium system first. This collegium system is a part of an issue with judiciary. What is this issue? That there is lack of transparency. It's leading to issues such as something called uncle judge syndrome. Uncle judge syndrome. Now let's understand how this collegium system works, and then we'll see why this problem is arising. So, if a Supreme Court judge has to be appointed, the Chief Justice of India, CJI, and 4 senior most judge of the Supreme Court will sit and decide whom to take. Okay? In this decision making, there are no minutes that are made public. We don't know why a particular judge was made and somebody else was not made. This is there. This led to, you must have seen, lot of judges were usually sons or daughters of judges. Yes? Or their grandparents were judges, or their uncle were judges. Usually this was seen in the case of uncle judge. For example, if your uncle is a judge, you will also become a judge. That's why this ongoing nepotism in the judiciary was very much criticized. That there is no transparency, and there is no judiciary was criticized, or I mean, people, because there is no transparency in appointment, the judiciary's meritocracy is questioned. That is the best person becoming a judge, or somebody who knows the Chief Justice and other Supreme Court judges very well becomes a judge, because there are a lot of lobbying that works behind the scenes. Yes, so this lacks transparency. To solve this, or see how it happens, so they recommend a candidate that, okay, these are the people that we have recommended for this much amount of, for example, there are 4 vacancies, they'll recommend 4 people. Okay? The president will then appoint these 4 people. Now the question is, whatever they are recommending, is it final or not? Is it binding on the president or not? This was the matter. The present scenario under which this works is this particular thing, that whatever this collegium system is residing, their recommendation is it has to be in tandem with the president. Okay, it is like a recommendation to the president, and president should consider it very seriously. And if president does not think that or think that the collegium has made a mistake, the president can refer it back to the collegium. If the collegium passes it again, If the collegium passes it again, then the president has to appoint. Now, to solve this transparency issue, government came up with something called NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. Appointment Commission. Here, the government did what? 3 members of SC, including the CJI, will be there. From the judges, this will be the representation. Then, the law minister will be there. Two persons with significant amount of people who the government or the president considers to have good amount of or have a significant amount of legal knowledge, or scholars, they'll be there. So because with this or with this particular move, they wanted to bring in transparency, that at least there are outside people from the judiciary who know how things are working. This was brought in under the 99th Amendment Act, Constitutional Amendment Act, 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. This was challenged in the Supreme Court. You can simply write this as the NJAC judgment. 2017 it came out. 2017 it came out, when it came out? 2017 or 2015 anyway. NJAC judgment. Now what the Supreme Court said was much more important than when it came out. Supreme Court said appointment is a cornerstone that keeps the judiciary independent from interference. That is only how separation of power is established, if judiciary is independent. And you need an independent judiciary to work on, or so as to say, you need an independent judiciary to ensure democracy. If a fundamental right is violated, people directly go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court itself is not free and controlled by the government. That means what? Democracy won't work. Whoever is in power will be able to dictate the terms. So, in NJC judgment, Supreme Court said independence of judiciary is the basic structure of the Constitution. If a constitutional amendment is affecting this basic structure doctrine given in the Keshwananda Bharati case, this is null and void and does not stand the test of basic structure. So they use the basic structure doctrine to strike down this NJAC amendment. This was criticized and lauded at the same time. Independence of judiciary is very much important, but how judiciary is appointing its own people, this much should be scrutinized from outside. Yes, there has to be checks and balances of however judiciary is functioning. Understood? Therefore, NJAC was struck down. It was, of course, the Supreme Court was criticized in some regard by, especially a lot of scholars and journalists, saying that Supreme Court just can't run away from accountability. Will have to be accountable because these courts are the final places where people go if they are in crisis. Yes, so that's why. You understand NJSC case? Yes. Now, this is one issue of judiciary. There is appointment transparency. There is no transparency in appointment. Now, first, let's finish the words written in the syllabus. What are the functions of judiciary? It is the guardian of the constitution. It has the power of judicial review to strike down any legislative or executive action that it finds to be unconstitutional. NJAC is one of those cases. NJSC matter. Protector of fundamental rights. Under Article 32, it protects the fundamental right of people. Okay. When it comes to Supreme Court, it has original jurisdiction, appellate jurisdiction, and advisory jurisdiction. What is this original jurisdiction? So, if there is a dispute between states and the center, if the dispute is between states and center, or states and state, center and state versus state, these are the disputes between governmental entities. It will directly go to the Supreme Court. This is the original jurisdiction. Adjudicate disputes between the center and states or between states. Yes. Appellate jurisdiction, to hear appeal against the decisions of the High Court. Yes. So, if people are not happy with the High Court's decision, they can go to the Supreme Court. Yes. Advisory jurisdiction, 142, right? In which article there is Supreme Court's power to do complete justice? 143 or 142? 123 is ordinance. Check. 142 is the advisory, is complete justice. Advisory jurisdiction is 143. Okay. If there is a question of law or a fact that the President refers to the Supreme Court about its opinion, legal opinion about the matter, then this particular thing is known as this is done under Article 143. Wherever you see these things or wherever you write these things, especially in governmental questions, you write down the Supreme Court article, constitutional article. What are the recent trends in executive? We'll study this under PMO and Cabinet Secretary specifically, but to give you an overall picture, the recent trend, as you can see, things are very much centralized at the PMO. Yes, everything is decided by the Prime Minister, and Council of Ministers only are like following orders. Yes. Similarly, Parliament, whichever ruling party is in the Parliament, and whoever is the Prime Minister or the Cabinet Ministers, they are like the party high command. Whatever they say, the same thing is happening in the Parliament. So Parliament's role as a as an institution to check the what do you say, to check the tendency of the executive to centralize functions within itself is a problematic thing. That's why when we study the issue under PMO, that particular issue will also apply to the whole of executive. That how Parliament's ability to hold the executive accountable is diluting with time. Okay? Parliament, perceived decline in parliamentary effectiveness. Issues include frequent disruption. Political parties are disrupting everything that is going on. Okay? They, at times, the issue is stage out. They walk out of the parliament from discussion, do protests. Decrease in number of sittings. This percentage has been decreasing with time. Increasing use of ordinance route, just like the farm laws that are there. Increasing use of ordinance rule. Parliamentary, however, we see parliamentary committees are continuing to do substantial amount of heavy lifting. So, under parliamentary committees also will study what all are recommendations under parliamentary committees. Now, under judiciary, there are other problems. Collegium system we understood. There is a particular tendency of judiciary, judicial activism, and this is done under not exactly activism, the word is overreach. Whenever judiciary plays an important role, it's called activism. Whenever it goes out of the way to do something that the executive or the legislature should have done, it's called overreach. Okay? The instrument public interest litigation, PIL, is used for this. Public interest litigation or PIL is used for this. Now, what is exactly PIL? PIL PIL. So, if you have an issue with me, for example, you go to court, you directly go to court. For you, somebody else won't go to court, right? If you have an issue with me. Now, imagine there are some issues that are social issues, that are public issues. Yes. For example, environment or environmental pollution. If you have an issue and with that environmental pollution, even though it is happening in a particular city or in a particular town, and the people there are being affected, those people do not have the avenue to go to the Supreme Court. They do not have the money, they do not have the expertise, they do not know any lawyer. They are not even aware of their rights. They don't even know that they have a right towards clean environment. Under which judgment we studied this? MC Mehta. And what recent judgment? There was a recent judgment about Great Indian Bastards. MK Ranjit Singh was in Union of India. Okay. So judgments are very much important. Now, PIL. Now, PIL, this was the times of early 1980s. There were two major judges, Krishna Iyer, Justice Krishna Iyer, and Justice P.N. Bhagwat, two Supreme Court judges at that time. There are certain cases that are coming to the Supreme Court. The first of those cases, or one of the most landmark cases, was called Hussain Ara Khatun versus Union of India. In Hussain Ara Khatun versus Union of India, yes, Rabe, correct. MC Mehta, right to clean and healthy environment. Yes. Under Hussain Ara Khatun, what happened was there were under trial prisoners in Bihar at that time. These under trial prisoners were serving term, they were under trial, but were there inside jail for a very long time, even more time than the crime they are accused of, not proven. They are accused of. For example, they are accused of a robbery, and the maximum punishment for robbery is, for example, 10 years. Some of the under trials were accused of robbery and been inside for 12 years, 15 years. And the condition they were living were a pathetic condition. So, under this case, a PIL was taken up in the Supreme Court. Now, what does a PIL mean? Those under trials did not directly go to the Supreme Court. There was a person, a lawyer, he found out that what is the condition of these prisoners. He went to the Supreme Court saying that even though I do not have a locus standi means if you have an issue or your rights are violated, you go to the court. That is called locus standi. Whoever's right is violated, that person has to be in the court. That is called locus standi. Locus standi. Whoever's right is violated has to be in court. Now, if this is there, this is applicable in every case. There is a strict applicability of this every case. That means person who is inside the jail or who cannot come to the Supreme Court physically will never get any rights. Isn't it so? To solve this problem, in Hussain Ara Khatun versus Union of India, this was a landmark case in terms of under trials, rights of under trials. Supreme Court said or brought out a lot of guidelines and gave instruction to the executive saying that how you can improve this, and immediately it said to fast track the trial procedure. Right to speedy justice was also under Hussain Ara Khatun. So under this judgment, whenever that person went to court, the publicly motivated individual, probably a lawyer from Calcutta, I guess, went to a Supreme Court. Supreme Court took the matter and said that public issues like this, which impact the larger public, and it is impacting often the public who do not know there is a legal recourse they can take and go to the Supreme Court. In such matters, the Supreme Court will make an exception to this rule of locus standi and hear their issues. Then, so this was the beginning of a judicial innovation by the Supreme Court, especially in the leadership of Justice Iyer and Bhagwati. This process of public interest litigation started. That whenever there is a public interest, you can go to court against that issue. Understood? Now, if judiciary is using this power under PIL and improving the governance of the country or listening to the problems of for example, some governments were not working well during the COVID-19. People went to court. The court issued direction of what all wrongs are you doing. Yes, so that is what? That is the role of judiciary to protect the fundamental rights of people. That is a activism role. It's called a judicial activism. But whenever at times these things go to court, such issues go to court, and they are not very much, what do you say? They are not especially within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. For example, couple of years ago, this was in 2023, end of 2023, the hearing on same-sex marriage was going on. The judgment came out in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality a few years ago. In which case did it decriminalize homosexuality? There is a case called Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India. It decriminalized homosexuality. Now, if you are, it's not a criminal act according to the law of the land to have a homosexual relationship. So the question was, the next step or the next step of evolution of this doctrine or constitutional morality or constitutional values is that if homosexuals are permitted to have a relationship, a sexual relationship with each other, the next step is you let them marry each other. Same-sex marriage was debated in the Constitution, debated before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave a very much of a mixed opinion, but the majority judgment was Supreme Court is not the avenue to decide whether or whether there should be a marriage system or not, or there is a system of marriage for a class of people or not. Now, of course, the argument against this was why aren't you treating heterosexuals and homosexuals equally? There's a right to equality question there also, and right to life comes in, right to freedom of expression comes in. Supreme Court said, whenever it comes to make a law or a particular structure of law, to structure how marriage is to function in a society, that is the job of the legislature. It is the job of the legislature to make laws on such matters. We are not a law-making body. If a law is made and there is some problem in law, we can interpret the constitution and fix the problem in that law, or if it is unfixable, we'll make it unconstitutional and strike it down altogether. But Supreme Court is not a law-making body, and it won't get into the law-making powers of the legislature. Now, for example, in some other case, Supreme Court actually goes into the law-making power. Don't you think it's a problematic thing? Whatever your jurisdiction is, you are overstepping the jurisdiction. That means separation of power is not going very smooth. So this is the issue of PIL and how it can be used in things such as judicial overreach at times. Understood? Right to speedy trial. Yes, perfect, Ravi. Okay, let's take a 5-10 minutes break. इंटरनेट चला गया. Locus standi, you understood. Intra-governmental relations. First is executive and legislative relations. Now, what is legislative? Legislature in this case is Parliament. Parliament is selecting the executive. But what is the issue that we talked about? The issue, again, we will study under PMO, that this executive using delegated legislation, okay, is acting like, what do you say, is not exactly going into the functions of executive. It is also doing some law making work using delegated legislation. It is not being so much accountable to the legislature. Executive, rather than being responsible to the parliament, it is having that problem of principal agent problem, that the agent knows the everyday functioning. That's why it can very well fool the principal, saying that whatever they are doing is very much necessary, etc., etc. This principal agent problem is here also. Okay? Under the issue of this, we'll study a lot of issues such as delegated legislation. Okay? Executive and judiciary, we understood how this conflict of appointment happens. The NJAC case, this is under this executive and judiciary. Legislature and judiciary. Now, there are things called parliamentary privileges. Under parliamentary privileges, the legislature cannot directly whatever the legislators are saying in the parliament, they have a privilege or immunity from being sued for those things. Yes, that is parliamentary privileges in very short. Using this parliamentary privileges, it is also prohibited to discuss the functioning of the Supreme Court within the parliament. And whatever the legislature is doing, apart from parliamentary privileges, whatever they are passing, it is judicial review. So that is the basis of relation. But what are the issues that are arising out of it? Issues are, even though the judiciary is functioning in whatever way possible, if you criticize the judiciary, it is leading to contempt of court. So where do you find this middle ground? Understood? So in this, we'll study issues such as contempt of court. Here, we'll study issues. Anti-defection is of course there, and delegated legislation. These are the things we'll study. Okay? Next word in your syllabus is Prime Minister's office. These are the things that are directly now being asked. How so? First, let's understand Prime Minister's office. Cabinet Secretariat, Secretariat, Ministry of Boards. Prime Minister's office, role, structure. The PMO is a staff agency and not a line agency. What is a staff agency? That is usually sits at the center, makes policy, more of a headquarter role. Headquarter role. A staff agency, not line agency. Its primary role is to provide secretarial assistance and policy advice to the Prime Minister. It is headed by the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, a very senior civil servant. It acts as Prime Minister's think tank, handles the Prime Minister's public relations, manages PM National Relief Fund, PM CARES Fund, and serves as a coordination point for complex policy issues that involve multiple ministries. Understood? Prime Minister's office is an extra constitutional body whose power and influence depends on the personality and working style of the Prime Minister. Don't you think the PMO's role will be different under Narendra Modi and Manmohan Singh? Yes, because we have seen that using the Planning Commission, the Congress High Command was very much interfering into the role of the Prime Minister's office. It has often been criticized for becoming an alternate center of power that undermines the authority of the cabinet and individual ministries. This is happening. Basically, the Prime Minister being, if the Prime Minister is a powerful Prime Minister and has a lot of public following, public backing, that means so much centralization of power will happen, other cabinet functioning will suffer. Okay? Cabinet Secretariat, role and structure. The Cabinet Secretariat is another staff agency whose client is the Union Cabinet as a whole. So, PMO is acting only for the Prime Minister. PM, Cabinet Ministers, the Council of Ministers, everybody's secretarial assistance goes to whom? The Cabinet Secretariat. Cabinet Secretariat. The Cabinet Secretariat role that every Cabinet Minister, there is a Finance Secretariat also. Finance Secretary heads the Finance Secretariat. Home Secretariat also. Home Secretary heads the Home Secretariat. But the Cabinet Secretary is the one who coordinates all the activities within everyone. Yes, that's the coordinating secretariat among all secretariats. Are you able to understand? So, cabinet secretary's role is very much important because it is the whole cabinet that the functioning of the whole cabinet is coordinated by the cabinet secretary. Provides secretarial assistance to the cabinet and its committees. Cabinet committees are there. Prepares the agenda for cabinet meetings, circulates papers, and records the decisions, whatever decision making is being done. Monitors the implementation of cabinet decisions. Okay? Acts as the primary crisis management center for the union government. That is why the cabinet secretary is officially the senior most civil servant in the country. Yes, that's why the role of cabinet secretary is so important. The core of this machinery is often described as the three-tier system. Secretariat, the brain of the government focused on policy formulation. Okay? Attached offices, these are a bridge, provide technical advice and executive direction. So basically, the secretariat is making the policy. Okay? Attached offices, whatever they are attached with the secretariat, they carry forward this policy to the ground level. Okay? Field organization. Field organization are what? Where street level bureaucrats work. Michael Lipsky we studied. Okay? The hands of the government responsible for on ground execution. What will be the field organization then? District administration. Why won't we study field organization differently? Because in other units we'll study district administration. What do you say? Urban local government, municipalities, things like that. These are field organizations. Alongside this hierarchy, boards and commissions function as specialized bodies to handle specific tasks. Boards and commission will study. Before we go to boards and commission, let's understand again what is the central secretariat. There is a metro station that we come across, central secretariat. What is the central secretariat? Central secretariat is not a single building, but the entire complex of ministries, departments of the union government. It is the nerve center and highest policy making body of the government. Every ministry, every department, everything is called a central secretariat. It is not a one building. Okay, this is the central secretariat. Whatever is being happening around the government, union government, that is comes within the central secretariat. To assist Council of Ministers, the political executive in formulation of policy, coordination, supervision, the secretariat itself does not execute policy. It only coordinates. So cabinet secretariat was mostly into cabinet ministry or the cabinet meetings, the top level hierarchy. A larger scheme of this will be central secretariat. Are you able to understand? So cabinet secretariat is a more important subset within the central secretariat. Are you able to understand? What are the work they have? First, policy formulation, legislative work, drafting bills, rules, whatever the minister requires. Financial control, prepare and manage the budget of the ministry. Okay, so whenever annual financial statement is produced by the finance minister, these data are taken from the central secretariat. Okay? Supervision, overseeing the implementation of policy by attached and field officers. They just oversee the function, that whether they are carrying out the instruction that has been given to them or not. Okay? Coordination, liaising with other ministries and state government. So if some state governments are not working, if some ministry is not working, they'll work as a liaising body, means they'll bring people together, make them sit together, get the work done. Yes, that is the role of central secretariat. Staffing. The secretariat staffed on the tenure system. Under this system, officers from All India services and central services are brought to secretariat for a fixed period, 3 years, 5 years or 7 years, okay? On deputation. After this tenure, they revert to their parent cadre or state. So after, for example, a few years of service, you will come to Delhi. So you will sit in this central secretariat. rational. The system is intended to bring fresh field experience into policy making and prevent the development of bureaucratic elite disconnected from reality. That is why you need fresh people to come into the secretariat and give their insights on policy making, things like that. So this is a value addition that we have added. The problem is this is staffed by generalists only. So they are not doing something very much different. That's why Niti Aayog was created and professionals from various fields were brought in for policy because this was a particular thing was done. Niti Aayog is a particular topic that will study under an issue. Okay? Next words used in your syllabus is ministries and departments. What is a ministry? Ministry is the highest level organization unit headed by the cabinet minister and the department within the ministry. For example, this is a ministry. There are departments within the ministries. These departments are headed by secretaries. For example, Minister of Finance is divided into Department of Economic Affairs, Expenditure, Revenue, these things are, and every department has a secretary. The senior most among this is called the Revenue Secretary, is called the Finance Secretary. There is no separate office of Finance Secretary. The senior most among them is called Finance Secretary. It can be a Secretary of Revenue, a Department of Expenditure, a Secretary of Economic Affairs. Okay? Rabe, are you able to understand everything? Perfect. Secretary to the Government of India is the administrative head of a department. Okay, so whatever I explained, whatever. And what is the role? They are like the principal advisor to the minister. Okay. So, what secretary would you want to be? IPS. Huh? So, what organization would you want to head? No particular organization. Probably at a DG level, will retire. In Andhra Pradesh only. Oh. You don't like these secretariat work, huh? No. You like field work and things on field. So if something is happening, you would want to be there. Good, good. So if I get stuck somewhere, I'll call you. Okay. So attached offices. Rabe also wants to be IPS. You guys should coordinate. Rabe will keep a check on you. Attached offices from second tier of administrative hierarchy. They act between secretariat and the field. Okay? They provide specialized technical advice, executive direction for implementation of policies formulated by the secretariat. They are repository of technical knowledge. For example, let's take an example. Central Public Works Department. They are attached to Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Yes. This Central Public Works Department is headed by an Indian Engineering Service officer. So, if housing is doing a project, that project has to go through this level of official. Understood? So, Director General of CPWD, yes, Director General of Health Services, anything that is being implemented, these are the technical expertise that are provided. Okay? So these are called come under attached offices, things like CPWD. Understood? So While ministries decide what to do, attached offices say how to do it. If ministries are saying this particular infrastructure project will go on and happen, so how will it happen? There has to be attached office that provides technical assistance. There is a Ministry of Road, Railways and Highways, but who says how it is to be done? National Highway Authority. Are you able to see how this happens? These form the third tier and are at the bottom of the hierarchy. These are field officers. Okay? Their work is to directly execute policies and programs, and they are responsible for service delivery. If an attached office provides the direction for execution, the field organization does the execution. As simple as that. So what are the field organizations? The district administration will study field organization then only. The BDO, Tehsildars, whatever there is, the development commissioner will study this. They are headed by officers who are responsible for specific geographical units. Yes. BDO is responsible for his block. Yes, network of post offices, income tax commissionerate. Okay. Our field organization executing policies of Central Board of Direct Taxes. Yeah? So these are a field organization. So if you go into IRS, when you become a commissioner level, you'll be a commissioner of a particular area, particular district, income tax commissioner. So there you will be implementing the policies of Central Board of Direct Taxes. You don't want to be IRS also, huh? Only IPS. If you don't get IPS, only IPS. Huh? Good. Rabe has no inputs. Where did I keep the bottle? Boards are established to manage specific sectors or functions, often requiring a group-based decision-making structure. What kind of boards? Such as the Railway Board. Railway Board is a high decision-making because it's a technical service altogether. Yeah? Railway Ministry alone cannot work everything. So Railway Board. So in Indian Railway Services, if you go to the senior most posts, you become a member of this Railway Board. These boards are established to manage specific sectors or functions, often requiring a collegial decision making. Created when work is too technical, voluminous, or requires quasi-judicial, quasi-legislative power, cannot be handled by a single secretary. Yes, the railway secretary cannot handle the whole of Indian Railways. Indian Railways is such a huge thing. For that, you need railway board to function. Okay? Boards as part of secretariat. See, things such as Central Board of Direct Taxes, Central Board of Indirect Taxes. So they function as de facto departments under Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. So these are different boards altogether. They work to get things done. So this is the structure of boards. Whenever studying this, you only remember the examples. Rest, you will write it yourself. Yes. So a railway board, a CBDT, CBIC, you say. Railway board, here it is. The railway board is the apex body of the Indian Railways and functions both the ministry, and the attached office. It's a unique. The chairman of railway board, holds the status of an ex officio principal secretary to the government of India. By office, he is secretary to the government of India. That means that is so senior of a post. Then comes commodity boards. Okay. Commodity boards like tea board, coffee board, spices board. They are created to manage and control the production and promotion of specific commodities that there is. Okay. Commissions are specialized bodies created to perform specific functions, typically investigate, uh, typical to investigate or in an advisory function or a regulatory function. So what are these? What kind of commission? UPSC, you know. Finance Commission, you know. What are Election Commission, you know. National Commission of STs, National Commission for Women, there is. So their role is what? Their role is to give advice to the government regarding certain things. Now these things can be of any nature. For example, the central see, there are commissions which are constitutional in nature, such as UPSC. They have a specific function. Election Commission, they have a specific function. Yes. Finance Commission. these UPSC election commission, these are specialized bodies. Okay? They carry out special functions. Commissions are specialized bodies created to perform specific functions, typically investigative, advisory, or regulatory functions. Statutory commissions are also there. They are created according to a statute, such as what do you say? Central Vigilance Commission, Central Information Commission, National Human Rights Commission. There are particular acts according to which these commissions have been made. Executive Commission, they are created by executive resolution, such as Niti Aayog. You must have heard Sarkariya Commission, Kothari Commission. You must have heard them. So these are executive commission. They are, I mean, for example, they are there to give certain recommendations. After that, they are dissolved. Okay? Executive resolution, they are formed according to it. Now, let's understand the issue of PMO's office in India. Whatever remaining issue, we will discuss tomorrow. First, tyranny of the executive. That means, with the increasing need for specialization and technicism, executive is having that benefit that we studied under principal agent problem. Yes, so executive knows, has the technical expertise to carry out. Parliamentarians usually do not know things such as cyber security, specialized or what do you say, wicked problems. Secondly, there is a hyper centralization of power. Centralization of power. PMO has progressively centralized decision making. So this is a process that will be called as hyper presidentialization of Prime Minister. This is used by a professor called Christoph Jefferlot. Christoph Jefferlot. The PMO has progressively centralized decision-making authority, often at the expense of the principle of collective cabinet responsibility. Example, historical instances such as major policy decisions during tenures of Indira Gandhi, okay? Such as or the present government, demonetization, GST implementation. So PMO is centrally critical to these initiatives. Okay, in the name of the PM, everything is being done. So this undermines something called collective decision making of the Council of Ministers, that they are collectively responsible. This is what Article 74 says. Granville Austin will criticize this, that this has the danger of increasing authoritarian tendencies. Understood? Sarkariya Commission will say it recommends the collective responsibility of the cabinet. Cabinet should be collectively responsible. Not only should the PMO only be responsible. Okay? Secondly, the other criticism is by Arun Shourie in his book, The Governance and the Sclerosis That Has Set In. Okay? It's a book that he write. You only write Arun Shourie's name. Criticize the growing CEO model of governance. That CEO gets the power from board of directors and CEO acts according to his own and rest are his juniors. Right? So here the Prime Minister is getting power from the Parliament and Prime Minister is acting as a CEO. It criticizes CEO model of governance where PMO behaves like a corporate headquarter, recommends strengthening secretariat of individual ministries, not bypassing. So Arun Shourie's recommendation is very much important. Third issue, the very term hyper presidentialization. This is what Professor Christoph Jefferlot will say. She's a political scientist, writes about Indian politics. Jefferlot will say that current style of Indian governance as a form of hyper presidentialization. You use this keyword, name of the professor, you are good as gold. Okay? The PMO has become the central hub for policy making, and everything is happening at the PMO. So It bypasses traditional bureaucratic and ministerial channels. Everything is happening in PM. Opaque functioning and lack of transparency. There is no clear transparency how PMO is functioning. It is only functioning according to PMO's directive. Because of the party high command culture, the scrutiny that parliament exercises is also very limited. Yes. So here you use the constitutional article, you forget these things. So see here, the constitutional article says, Article 75(3), collective responsibility to the parliament. It talks about. So Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to the parliament, and it inherently shows that there has to be transparency in their decision making, and that transparency has to be showcased in their report to the parliament. Yes. So in SP Gupta versus Union of India, Justice Bhagavati held that open government. So, for example, this recommendation, it can be written anywhere as an introduction or a conclusion. It can be written. So it is put here. Not necessarily you will have to write it here. Held that open government is a new democratic norm essential for accountability. Because he says secrecy becomes a source of authority and must give way to transparency in a democratic society. Yes? In UK, there is a best practice. The Prime Minister's office publishing details of its decision making process, why this particular decision was made, why this was chosen over that, okay? And the roles of his advisors, thereby significantly enhancing transparency. Whatever the advisor is there, for example, a person is appointed as an advisor, what role will that advisor play, what exactly will they do, everything is detailed in detail. This shows the maturity of a democracy. Understood? Over reliance on bureaucratic advisors. So, rather than having ministers who are elected by the people, you over rely on bureaucratic advisors. Second ARC specifically recommended striking an appropriate balance between bureaucratic advice and political leadership. Okay? Lord Rudolph highlights the inherent risk of technocratic governance, that the people who are not elected, they won't know the mood of the people. Yes? So that very idea of bureaucratic elite doing everything is there. Sixth is politicization of PMO. Everything is done in Prime Minister's name. Every government scheme, for example, if it's a agriculture scheme, Prime Minister's photo is there. There is no agriculture minister to be seen. Politicization of PMO. So Paul Brass warns that politicization of administrative offices will undermine the neutrality in civil services working there. So administration suffers for this because politicization is happening. There is something burning. Dominance in foreign policy decision making. You must have heard about C. Rajamohan. He writes those articles in Indian Express. So C. Rajamohan is a professor in Singapore. He says the PMO-driven foreign policy could weaken long-term foreign policy making. That if the PMO is driving all foreign policy, that means the foreign policy is driven by the personal relation of the PM with the other country. If our prime minister likes the prime minister of, for example, Japan or the US, and the relation is good between them, that means Indo-US relation will be good. Is that a good thing? No, right? Even if the personal relations are bad, the relation between countries should be stable. It should not be driven by the personal relations of the prime minister. C. Rajamohan is warning against this, that dominance in foreign policy decision making of the PMO is centralizing or personalizing foreign policy of India. Plus, centralization leads to increased workload, and this is delaying the decision making. Then generic points you write, institutional checks and balances aren't there, whatever. those things you write. So this was the picture. This is the whole picture. Next issue is the cabinet secretariat in India. We have understood what cabinet secretary does. What are the issues? Over centralization and shifting locus of power. Because Prime Minister's office is becoming more and more powerful, the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, the principal secretary of the PM, is essentially or effectively operationally more powerful than cabinet secretary. Yes. Even though cabinet secretary is a senior most position, but the principal secretary is more powerful. Okay. That's why this concentration of power with the PMO alters the traditional role of cabinet secretary. That is the first issue. Shifting locus of power. James Maynard argues that prime ministers become more powerful and decision becomes centralized to PMO, and this makes their role, cabinet secretary's role, shift out. You can simply write John Maynard as an example, but it's a straightforward thing. Complex interministerial coordination. Okay. This is an issue. So, for example, coordination among diverse, powerful ministries, each with their own priorities and turf, is a significant challenge. For example, recently, the recent challenges, environmental challenges, it requires a lot of coordination. Cabinet Secretary's office is at times very much limited in its resources, such as the implementation of GST. So that's why GST Council had to be formed. So Cabinet Secretary's role is very much limited. Short tenure and lack of continuity. Now, a former Cabinet Secretary, S.S. Khera, writes a book called The Central Executive. You give an example of him. Highlights the short tenure forces the incumbent to focus on immediate crisis rather than long-term institutional reforms. So, because the jurisdiction or the post is for how much long? 6 months, 1 year. Within 6 months, 1 year, what will an officer do? For first 2 months, that officer will take time to actually acclimatize within the role. And the next 6 months, his job will be gone. He'll retire. So, the tenure of cabinet secretary has to be a longer and a fixed tenure. It should be there. For example, if you become cabinet secretary, you will become for 3 years. You have time to implement a lot of changes. Yes. Second ARC will also recommend this, and SS Khera has also recommended this. Okay? Institutionalization. Another challenge with the cabinet secretariat is the balancing bureaucratic neutrality alongside the working with politicians. How can you act neutrally when politicians are controlling a lot of things of you? Paul Appleby will say public administration is policy making, thus it is inherently political. The activity inherently is political. There is no distinction between politics and administration. There is no dichotomy. So Appleby will say this. But being the top office, it's perfectly a dilemma that cabinet secretary faces. You will have to work according to the government, but you will also have to be very neutral in nature. That is a dilemma that it faces. That is a challenge it faces. Next challenge, or next issue with it is opacity is there. That the function is very opaque in nature. Cabinet secretaries, whatever the bureaucratic work they do, it is not tabled anywhere. That is a challenge. Okay? Pratap Bhanu Mehta, you know Pratap Bhanu Mehta? So these are columnists. So in Hindu, a lot of their articles come. He talks about institutional opacity. Institutional opacity is a keyword that you can use anywhere, and you can quote his name, Professor P.V. Mehta. Pratap Bhanu Mehta, he'll do what? So he says there is an institutional opacity which is a problem of the Indian state. it leads to lack of trust among people. Understood? So constitutional and legal framework are there. So 74 Council of Ministers and to aid and advise the president. 74 we have studied. Government of India Transactions of Business Rule 1961 and Article 77. They formally outline the role of Cabinet Secretary in preparing the agenda for the Cabinet, circulating documents, etc. Under this, we will study something. It's written following. What is the solution? What we can implement? One, we have to bring in long-term solutions. For example, at least 3 years for Cabinet Secretary should be there and de-link the age from superannuation. Okay? So, United Kingdom's permanent secretary model is a best practice. And second ARC and SS Khera are also recommending this. Institutional coordination mechanism. Empower committees of secretaries chaired by Cabinet Secretary to serve as an effective pre-cabinet clearance. Their recommendation should be formally recorded and given due weight. So committee of secretaries are there. So all secretaries are there. For example, everybody in the government, every secretary in the government, they sit, or all kind of secretaries of cabinet ministries, they sit together. It's called committee of secretaries. A lot of decision making is taking place through that. Best practice is Canada's clerk of the Privy Council heads the robust system of interdepartmental committees. Here, it could be implemented. Okay? Then, strengthening neutrality and impartiality. You simply write TSR Subramaniam judgment. For example, whatever judgment I am quoting, I can't also give you extra judgment list. So you go back, you study about those judgments that you keep in mind and put it in your notes. TSR Subramaniam judgment, it wanted to establish a civil service board that does everything. For example, posting, appointment, transfers of civil servants, civil services board does, and it is impartial in nature. This will create an institutional buffer against political pressure. Improving transparency. So, clerk of the Privy Council of Canada that we studied, it publishes an annual report to the Prime Minister and state of public service that should be adapted in India. Okay. Now, what does second ARC say? Specifically, let's see. Stability of tenure, stability and tenure should be there. 3 to 4 years fixed tenure should be there. Okay. Secondly, strengthen neutrality. How? Create a central civil services authority and cabinet secretary should be the chairman of this central civil services authority. They'll take all major decisions regarding appointment and everything. The civil services board that the TSR Subramaniam judgment talks about actually looks like this: Central Civil Services Authority. Then, enhancing the coordination function. So, committee of secretaries chaired by cabinet secretary should be formally empowered and used more effectively. This is what second ARC is saying. And finally, it is saying on performance management. Performance management systems, PMS, it should be overseen by the cabinet secretary. Okay? And that is how through effective coordination can happen. And when cabinet secretary is working for a longer period of time, this can happen. So, I'll send this to you. You start studying all of this. Tomorrow we are to discuss delegated legislation and its issues related to judiciary. What else were you able to discuss? Problems with boards and commissions. What else? What else do we have to discuss? Hmm? Issues are very easy and fast to discuss. Huh? Quickly you discuss these things, no issues. Prime Minister's office we have discussed. Delegated legislation. ठीक है. Delegated legislation, and the judiciary will also discuss whatever issues related to appointment, PILs that are there, judicial activism. We'll discuss all of those things. Right? Intergovernmental issues. Intergovernmental issues are actually, see, delegated legislation is the intergovernmental issues. Legislature and executive. Judiciary's overreach is an intergovernmental issues. So those are issues. But of course, we'll discuss whatever issues come under this. Tomorrow, then we'll start with a new unit, plans and priorities. Very short unit. So we'll mostly focus on the issues regarding this. Indicative planning and things like that. We'll study tomorrow. Delegated legislation. So where do we want to do it? Now or last unit? Because intergovernmental problems is delegated legislation only. Complete unit, है ना? Whatever unit is there. Much better that way. Whatever remaining units will be there or issues will be there, whatever problems, you also keep a note, separate note on this. So let me know before we start the last unit. Yes? We'll discuss that also. Some things also while making notes I forget. I overlook. So these are the issues that have to be done. Okay, we'll do it tomorrow. Yeah. Bye bye. you.